All right, how you guys doing today? We're gonna hop into part 3 of why I don't believe that the asteroid killed the dinosaurs, whatever I'm calling this series. First things first, though, just want to make sure y'all like that video. Hit a little exit full screen, scroll just a little bit, like the video, full screen it back up. You feel me? So where we left off last, we talked about the bound that God put that the waves may not pass over again, right? Whether you want to say that that's the sea, whether you want to say that that's whatever the case, it doesn't necessarily matter. Back to this picture of the dinosaur. Here we have a clearer picture than what was used in the original research article. This is the picture they had, right? So if we're going, and all these pictures are black and white, I know that there was color pictures in 2010. Yes, color pictures were in 2009. This is the best we could do. I know they said that this thing was over 60 meters in the air. This thing was apparently more than 60 meters in the air. I don't know how she got so close to it, right? But if it's more than 60 meters in the air, this is the best we got. But we got you standing right here next to it. We got your little hand drawings. This is why I don't necessarily trust this, because what are these pictures? This is the best we got. Yeah, I think that they're going into this with the ulterior motive to debunk this as like, this isn't humans drawing dinosaurs. And then they use these creepy pictures that are only their eyes, their telephoto lenses, and their binoculars to say that it's not a dinosaur and that they're just superimposed in mud stains and everything, what they want to say, right? I don't buy it. I don't buy it. This is the best photos we got. I ain't buying it. Oh, I didn't mean to close that. Did I mean to close that? I probably meant to close that. Anyway, so when I mentioned my English class that I took and that I was writing about my creation stuff and I was doing all my research, Psalm 104 verse 9 is the verse that I mentioned that I'd seen, but also this article from Smithsonian Magazine from 2006 from Helen Fields, Dinosaur Shocker. Probing a 68 million year old T-Rex, Mary Schweitzer stumbles upon astonishing signs of life that may radically change our view of ancient beasts, right? And you're thinking, I don't know what this picture is. This is a red blood cell found in the bone of a dinosaur. We can see through here, tiny blob of stretchy brown matter, soft tissue from inside the leg bone suggests the specimen had not completely decomposed. Bone building cells, and in a separate discovery, they found the bone included not only standard cortical bone, but also calcium-rich medullary bone. Wow, that was hard to say. Which accumulates prior to laying eggs. This indicates that the animal was a female and possibly pregnant, right? So then it gets into the backstory of Mary Schweitzer, I believe her name was. Yeah, Mary Schweitzer. Right, she was dressed in her blue capri pants, a sleeveless top. Her long hair was flowing over her bush. We don't care. She just went, ooh, hoo, hoo, like she's Santa, and she was excited. I need to stop. All right, so the finding amazed her colleagues, who had never imagined that even a trace of still soft dinosaur tissue could survive. Mind you, hard tissues like bone gradually acquire minerals from the environment and become fossils. And she's one of the first scientists to use the tools of modern cell biology to study dinosaurs. Mind you, this is Smithsonian Magazine. Same people that said that that the asteroid killed the dinosaurs and everything that we looked at last time, right? What are these titles? Asteroid confirmed as a dinosaur killer. Debunking the dinosaurs of Kachina Bridge. An asteroid strike confirmed as dinosaur killer. My bad, there's one more. And why did mammals survive when dinosaurs perished? So back to this, right? We see she was one of the first people to do this thing and appended conventional wisdom by showing that some rock hard fossils tens of millions of years old had remnants of soft tissues hidden away in the interiors. The reason that it hadn't been discovered before is no upright thinking paleontologist would do what Mary did with her specimens. Well, what did Mary do with her specimens, you may be asking? Let's keep on reading and find out. We don't go through all this effort to dig stuff and destroy it. In acid? She put dinosaur bones in acid. Nobody thought to do that. Why? Because you destroy it, right? Sure, it's great science. Dude, Thomas Holtz Jr. It's great science. What a quote. This could show how the new evidence on dinosaur evolution and blood vessels and blah 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 blah. They're warm-blooded, cold-blooded, or both. Wow. So Mary, you know, as mad as she is or as happy as she is, as excited as she was, right? Her research has been hijacked by young Earth creationists who insist that dinosaur soft tissue couldn't possibly survive millions of years. So, doing my paper that I did, right, I learned that fossilization, if you were unaware, can happen in a matter of hours or in the matter of millions of years, right? So young Earth creationists think, so people like myself, we think that the flood happened, dinosaurs got fossilized, and all this other jazz got fossilized, and the amount of sediments in these things vary, which leads to different results on unrealistic and unreliable readings from radiometric dating machines. So that's what we believe. You know, there's a little evidence to back that up, but that's what we believe. Mount St. Helens volcano, that's all I'll say. A lot of people hate that in that test and that experiment, but Mount St. Helens volcano, I don't think this should have did what it did. But anyway, so stuff like this, you're right. So we're getting into, so fossilization can happen in a matter of hours. 40 days would have been long enough of submerging, moving sediments around the earth, breaking of the fountains of the deep, like we talked about last time, would have been far more than enough to fossilize a dinosaur. And things like jellyfish, who aren't even supposed to fossilize because their bodies are 95% water or more, and they evaporate in the matter of 2 to 3 hours once they die and wash up on shore. But we find jellyfish fossils, and this means this isn't necessarily evidence of a giant global flood, right? But where we find jellyfish fossils all over the world, this indicates that some massive moving of sediments would have had to happen, mostly caused by some type of water flood, because, you know, the tsunami type of thing, because they're jellyfish, which means that, like, just throwing a bunch of rocks around isn't going to fossilize them. But something like a tsunami or a global flood event would do so. Sorry, we see that the oldest jellyfish fossils are around 508 million years old, almost 10 times more than the dinosaur fossils. Not saying that they had to be around the same time, but just saying that jellyfish fossils, which shouldn't be a thing, right? They're old. They're not really recent according to science. They're old, right? And if dinosaurs are 66 million years old and they're thought to be around, you know, young Earth creationists would say they're around Noah's time, these are older, not necessarily saying that they're different times, but they're old, probably from around flood times, also because you really can't fossilize jellyfish like that. Like I said, they're 95% water, and they evaporate about 2 to 3 hours once they have washed up on shore. So anyway, back to our Mary Schweitzer article. So they think that because they found a blood cell, the Earth is only a few thousand years old. Of course, it's not unusual for a paleontologist to differ with creationists, but when they misrepresent her data, she takes it personally because she describes herself as a complete and total Christian, guys. Mary Schweitzer is a complete and total Christian. Complete and total Christian, disagreeing with the young Earth creationists. Make it make sense, Mary. On a shelf in her office is a plaque bearing the Old Testament verse, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not harm you, and plans to give you hope in the future." You know what, Mary? I resonate with that so much because I was actually named after that verse, right? If you're unfamiliar, my name is Jeremiah, and I'm named, my mom says, after 29:11 in that book, which is this exact verse. And because Mary has this in her office, she is a complete and total Christian. This is the evidence. This plaque right here, that's 100% evidence. And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying that this is what this article is perpetuating. This is what Mary's perpetuating. That she is a Christian because she has a plaque on her wall of Jeremiah 29:11. It doesn't even say where that's from. It just says an Old Testament verse. They didn't even give it the honor it deserves of naming which verse it is. But she's a complete and total Christian. But this verse is from the Old Testament, which means she probably believes that this was spoken, but she doesn't believe in the young Earth creationist story. Interesting. So let's keep going, Mary. Let's keep on seeing what you got to say. And I'm not going to say anything about her life story, right? She grew up in Helena, Montana. I'm not going to say anything about that other than she got a degree in communicative disorders, and a dozen years after she went to college, somehow she got a doctorate in paleontology, right? She wanted to study the microscopic structure of dinosaur bones depending on how much the animal weighs, but then came the incident with the red spots. Right, so I think she doesn't even have a doctorate yet, I believe, right? So she's trying to study the thin slices of bones from this, but she's having a hard time getting them to stick to the glass side, so she sought help from a molecular biologist. Gail Callis, shout out Gail Callis. He took the slides to a veterinary conference where she set up the ancient samples for the others to look at. One of the vets said, "Do you know you have red blood cells in that bone?" Sure enough, they were there. And Schweitzer recalls, I looked at this and I thought, this can't be. Why can't this be, Mary? Red blood cells don't preserve. Now there's a fork in the road we have with this argument, right? Science people can say this article's from 2006. Red blood cells don't preserve. This is an example of science getting something wrong, and we're figuring stuff out, right? We're gonna figure more stuff out. Red blood cells don't preserve. Something went wrong. Bloody bloop. Like, we got something wrong. Good. Science can advance and figure out. We don't know much about red blood cells. Let's figure out what we don't know, right? So found that such structures. They say, well, oh my bad. The other thing is, oh, red blood cells don't preserve, which means this dinosaur is young. And her mentor told her, right, that's what they look like, but it's possible they're not. He gave advice. See if you can find evidence that shows that's not what they are, right? Look for the no. This has got to be cap. It's not true, right? Red blood cells, they don't preserve. We know this, right? We know this. But she found evidence of heme in the bones. Heme is a part of hemoglobin, carries oxygen, and gives red blood cells their color. Blah, blah, blah. She says if particles of that one dinosaur were able to hang around for 65 million years, maybe the textbooks were wrong about fossilization. The textbooks that have raised every scientist that are basically alive today. Those textbooks, or the ones that the scientists alive today wrote, or all that stuff. We're believing what they say about 65 million year old dinosaurs, hundreds of millions of year olds about evolution, and we don't even know that red blood cells can stick around for 65 million years. We just assume that that's not the case. We assume a lot of things, but we assume red blood cells can't stick around for 65 million years. That's kind of crazy, right? But Schweitzer, she tends to be self-deprecating, claiming to be hopeless at computer labs, talking to strangers. Colleagues admire her, saying she's hardworking and determined. Right? Go you, Mary, go you. And you know what? Me and Mary got a lot in common. She asks a lot of unusual questions and takes a lot of nerve. If you point her in a direction and say, don't go that way, she's the kind of person who says, why? And I've just had a one-on-one with my boss about a week ago, and she said the exact same thing about me, that I asked a lot of why do we have to do something, and she goes and tests it herself. Same way we're doing right now. We're changing our way of thinking. We like to think about what we think about, right? You don't just believe evolution blindly. You know how evolution functions, right? That's why you believe it, or so you say. Right? Over the next 3 summers, that's 3 years, they chipped at that dinosaur, gradually removing it from the cliff face. They called it B-Rex in Bob's honor. Shout out you, B-Rex, Mr. Big Bob, man, and nicknamed it Bob. Look at you, Bob. You go. 2001, they put it in dirt to plaster, protect it. The package weighed more than 2,000 pounds, right? So this T-Rex was, we're in the Montana Canyon, Museum of the Rockies, Bob Harmon. So the bone was just sitting there, sticking out of a rock wall, with the red blood cells in it. Not even like it's preserved in any special way. It's just sticking out of a rock wall with red blood cells in it. The bone is sticking out of a wall. How did that even happen? The bone is just sticking out of the wall. 65 million years old and it's just sticking out of a wall. I mean, well, nah, I don't even believe it. I can't even think of an explanation of why that would be a thing. So it was more than 2,000 pounds. Too much for the helicopter. So it's split in half. And then one of the leg bones is broken in pieces and fragments, and that's what Schweitzer needed for her microscope explorations. So turns out Bob had been misnamed. She's a girl, and she's pregnant. Bob's pregnant. Dang it, Bob. How did this happen? Your dad's not going to be happy with you. And Schweitzer studied birds, so she knew all about the medullary bones and figured what was going on in the T-Rex specimen. And many paleontologists now agree that birds are dinosaurs' close and living relatives. In fact, they say birds are dinosaurs. Look at that. So then, right, she studied birds and all that, so we got some farmer. Some farmer said, you want that lady ostrich? Y'all still need that lady ostrich? They sent it over. And look at that, a paper published in Science last June presents microscope pictures of medullary bones in ostrich and emu sides. If this is medullary, or some other pronunciation, which I think it is, that word looks semi-familiar. Y'all are gonna hate me this whole video for me saying medullary, right? Side by side with the dinosaur bone, and those identical features are near identical, right? How fantastic. That's where we're gonna end this now. But next video, we're gonna get into a little deeper, right? So we see that 65 million year old dinosaur bones that are just sticking out from rock structures in Montana can preserve red blood cells. That's what we've established here. 2006. This is what we got. So we'll continue this next video. All right, that's going to be the end of the video. Hope you guys have yourself a fantastic rest of your day. Peace.